Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Good afternoon. My name's Ferhat Gürkan. I'll be moderating this session. Please keep your cameras on at all times and ask questions in the chat, and just make sure that you're all on mute as well. I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Colber, who is a curriculum writer at the Faculty of Education within the University of Melbourne. He was a proud public school teacher for 12 years, being named the top 50 finalist in the Varkey Foundation's Global Teacher Prize. He's passionate about teacher collaboration, which he supports through organising teacher meets and running EduReading, an online academic reading group. In this session, Stephen will talk about modern technologies and ancient teaching techniques. Over to you, Stephen.
Beautiful. Thanks for that. I must say, Farhad, I feel your pain. I had to do that at a conference just last week, read out all these bios, and it's like,
yeah,
we don't write bios to be read out. It's like, as soon as you just hear it read out, you're like, oh, yuck. Why would someone put those words in? Anyway, thank you.
No worries.
All good. Welcome, people. It's good to see some faces, obviously. Talking to myself is something I mostly do on weekends, so this is good to do it in front of people. Hello to Michael, hello to Robert. Thanks for the talking in the chat. Basically, despite what Ferhat said, I'm just a teacher that works at a university at the moment, so I'll just be talking to you about teaching stuff. I imagine you're teachers, and that's why you're here, and so that's how we'll do it. Apologies for me standing up. It's kind of, I've been sitting all day. It's boring me. So I'm talking about combining modern technologies with ancient teaching techniques. Originally in the title, I had some stuff about AI, but I don't know if anyone else is with me. But if no one ever talked about AI ever again, I think I'd be all right with that, because it's becoming a bit of a thing that I'm a bit over. But anyway, that's what our session's about. So back in the day when I was young and looked like that, UNESCO came and filmed me talking about something, and they're like, what's your teaching thing? And I said, technology. As you can see for this embarrassing quote, I don't know why I put that there. Technology makes learning more accessible to our students, and it helps us do our work more quickly and effectively. They love that for whatever reason. Anyway, I'll probably fly over this pretty quickly because it's not that interesting to me. But the general debate is between teacher-centered and student-centered learning. I think we can kind of do a bit of both if we do technology well, but again, I don't want to go into the debates. But for me, I've always thought of my own teaching as kind of like this wavy line that you can tell I drew myself, because it's not very straight. But it's not nothing goes increasingly up. It's not just like, oh, I got better at teaching yesterday than I did the day before. It's like all of a sudden I work out a new technique, I work out a new skill set, and then all of a sudden I'm kind of, things are dramatically different. And this might date me or make me sound old, but I remember the days when before we had, these clickers, maybe some of us still don't, and you'd have to walk to the front of the class and press next. And so you'd be like, all right, children, what we're learning about today, and then you'd have to like quickly run up to the keyboard and press next. And I would say for me, that was a quantum leap, being able to stand at the back of the class and do things like that, even having a wireless mouse, styluses, things like that. Using like a document camera, stuff like that is like, for me at least, and it might just be me being weird, life-changing in the sense that it means you can do things differently. For most of my career, I've been an English teacher, and the amount of times I've been like highlighting a part of my book and being like, gee, it'd be good if someone could see what I had on my page. And then to have a document camera was like, oh, now they can. And so, I'm sitting at the front of the class saying, underline that, and they can all see it on the big screen and things like that. Is a big deal. We'll talk about the other image at the top there, but that's kind of, another, hi, Perry Hunt. How we doing? Sorry, I should emoji these things. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. But yeah, another quantum leap for me. And this is something that everyone's been through, but the difference between teaching and learning, like I used to think, oh man, I was really engaging in that lesson. And then a week later, I'd ask my students, hey, remember that thing we did last week? And they'd be like, Absolutely not. But the transition to focusing on their learning primarily rather than being, interesting and exciting and whatever, like, remember that really engaging thing I did? Instead focusing on what they actually remembered was a bit of a game changer for me. But I'm just giving you a bit, this broad stroke stuff, and then I'll get into actual tools you can hopefully use tomorrow. Same thing, peer assessment. At one point, I almost got myself into trouble because I had the students so convinced, like I'd say, all right, at lunchtime, we if you want, you can come in and we'll mark each other's essays. And I had them so convinced that they were actually marking each other's essays that like someone called me into their office and was like, are you still marking their work? And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. I just give them the strong sense that they know what's going on. And then I look at what they'd marked and then look at what I'd marked and be like, yeah, maybe they're on the right track. Just as a way to empower them to in the process rather than, assessment being something where they get a score at the end. Similar thing, screen recording. I don't know if this is just a person who uses technology sort of thing, but the amount of times I have to say to students, all right, hey, we're using this new platform, and then 25 kids all at once are like, how do I log in? Where's the button? What's my password? How do I get to where you are? And so in that situation, I'd make a short little video and I'd send it to them and they could do it do it live and follow along type of deal. I was just talking about this yesterday, actually. One year of my teaching career, I gamified my class. So it was a little bit Dungeons and Dragons. It was a little bit, everyone was in a team and everyone, had a character sheet and they had, those sort of things. I would never do that again because it didn't work very well. But I learned a lot about the kind of different options you can have in a classroom to sort of make things a bit more interesting and a bit more engaging. My original goal was like, maybe if I could get the students who aren't, who have skill sets that aren't just like, the mainstream school skill sets, if I could give them some credit for the work they were able to do, that would be good. But then what happens was the kids who normally got 100% were like now disappointed that some of the other kids were getting good marks. Anxiety, it all became a mess. Anyway, chat says, love the idea of gamifying. Try it. Don't commit as hard as I did because I remember every Monday morning I'd come in, I'd be like, all right. It was like Monday was team activities, Wednesday was like creative activities, and Friday was like competition or something. And then we had to have a narrative, like a leaderboard, and like the image in the middle was one of the teams. I don't even know what that says, what their motto is. If anyone speaks Latin or French, something about bagels and whatever that is, an otter. I don't even know. Whatever animal that is. It would be like, okay, this house, like, that team had moved into the ascendancy. They were doing well. They were exploring new things. They defeated the other, groups, kingdoms, etc. Nadia, talk to me. Oh no, you're just arriving. All good. But Nadia was going to explain it to us.
It's a badger.
Says, hey?
It's a badger.
A badger. Thank you, Nadia. Appreciate it.
Sorry. I thought my microphone was off.
No, perfect. That's why I was asking. So I know there's other people in the room, not just me. But yeah, it's a thing you can explore. These two books are like sort of the books to explore if that's something you're interested in doing. Anyone want to have a go? I put activities in here because I was like 45 minutes is a long time to talk. But if you want to put in the chat anything you can think of that was a quantum leap that sort of changed your teaching methodology, maybe is the word to say, but something that improves your teaching sort of astronomically or in a significant way. And they don't all have to be boring like me saying, wireless mouse. But I'm just trying to give you kind of concrete examples that might help you think through it. And of course, if you have a good one, next time around, you should run a session like this and sort of just be like, hey, here's all my cool ideas in one place. And maybe another teacher can pick up on some of them and run with them, I guess. That's the goal anyway, at least that's my goal. In me life, Michael says, get AI to sort all of it. ICT, come on, that's a bit general. Surely we could be a bit more specific than just ICT, but I'm with you. Vivian Wong says touchboard. I don't even know what that is. I'm going to Google that on my phone. I'm guessing primary, early childhood, because spend most of my time teaching in secondary schools. A touchboard. Is that like an interactive whiteboard or is it different? You're like, what? He's not allowed to ask us questions. He's the talking one. Looks like a fancy interactive whiteboard to me. Could be wrong though. Vivian says yes. All right. Zoom lockdown. Which part? The lockdown bit or the Zoom part? Notability or both. Hey, the reason I'm working at a university now is because of lockdown. I was like, wait, we don't have to do yard duty and we don't have to yell at year nines all day. Notability. Ooh, sketchnoting kind of concept mapping type of stuff. Love it. Gotcha. Both. We should all do lockdown. I like that. All right, I'll move on. Feel free to chuck in chat or finish typing if you are. As you can tell, I'm a bit revved up energy-wise because I'm standing instead of sitting. So, so I'm having fun. At least I am, right? All right. Oh, I should have shown you this before. But you can think theoretical understandings, like I was saying, the difference between learning and teaching, different strategies, shifting beliefs, activities, interventions, technologies, tools, relationship strategies, practices, efficiency hacks, habits, whole school approaches. It's almost like at one point I was like, I'll turn this into a book. And then I ran out of ideas, so I stopped. But anyone else want to tell me in chat a cool thing they do? No. Okay. All right. Sam or Kim, notability, tell me more. Do you use it with classes or do you use it yourself? Are you modeling with it? What are you doing? Yes, I am trying to steal your ideas. I mean, no, I'm just enjoying your company. All right, so what we're going to talk about is ancient and modern. And the reason I showed you the UNESCO thing at the start is because calling some of them ancient and some of them modern is kind of stupid. And if we think about it long enough, probably a little bit racist, to put some of these in ancient and to put some of them in modern. But, that's only me because I've overthought it and written papers on it and stuff like that. But they're the things we're going to talk about. If they're not familiar to you, then that's good. And, well, if some of them are unfamiliar to you, where have you been? But anyway, that's what we'll be talking about. Chat says, sometimes use flipped learning with my senior classes. Michael, good to hear. If anyone else wants to contribute other than me and Michael just vibing, then that's welcome. Not just kidding. After this, me and Michael are going out for coffee because we're going to be best buds, I can just tell. So, revision as an ongoing practice. Your shout? Oh, things are a bit harder up around here. Maybe I'll get you a tea. All right, revision as an ongoing practice. Again, if you take nothing out of this other than a couple of screenshots of some books, then, I've done a good job. But I'll talk you through a little bit about retrieval practice. I'm just finishing reading another book about it that's horrible, aimed at higher ed stuff. But, whatever, small teaching it's called. Wouldn't recommend it. It's not a very good book. Basically, retrieval practice is getting the kids to, and that picture in the middle I love, because if you've ever had that moment when you ask a question and your students all kind of go and look slightly up and to the right, that's a good feeling, at least to me, because that means they're actually thinking instead of just writing things down. So retrieval practice, Kate Jones' classic book, Pooja Agarwal, I don't know who Patrice Bain, a co-author, but powerful teaching, really, really good on the topic, and gives you lots of practical strategies. I'm just going to show you the ones I've actually used because there's a lot and I haven't used them all. Zainab. Oh, love the name Zainab. Taught many wonderful Zainabs in my life. Demonstration, storytelling, draw along, flag test, mini whiteboard usage. Okay, you're going to have to help me out on draw along and flag test. I'm not familiar with those ones, but love it. Retrieval practice. So this is for Year 12 English language, so very niche. Every lesson is one box. Every lesson the students get 10 questions. We do it for probably the first 5 minutes of every class. That's a content heavy focused sort of thing. So it might be a bit different if you're doing something a bit more theoretical like mainstream English or, I don't know, maths maybe. It might be a bit tricky to think of that. Go on. Hello? No? Okay. So basically, yep, 10 quick questions. I would literally write them on my phone as I was walking to class in a OneNote. I'd be like, yep, what did we do last lesson? Typing it in there. The students all just write them into their books, the questions as they are. We don't go through answers until the very end. It's low stakes or no stakes is the sort of phrase we use. And then we write the answers together. So it's not me knowing the answer. It's me picking on students and getting them to provide the answers. Then we write the answers up at the end. And then before the exam at the end, you can see down the bottom questions, answers, and Quizlet tabs. Because at the end, I turn the whole thing into the longest Kahoot of all time and the longest Quizlet of all time. So it was important that I did it properly. All right, Zainab says, I'm a science teacher, so we draw and annotate together. Ooh, I like that. Flag test is when I flag certain items according to the topic and the students walk around the class and answer questions about each flag. Ooh, I like that. Embodied practice. I like it. They're moving, they're walking. Good. I love it. Thank you. So this is all about getting students to pull information out of their head. Another thing I've tried is called tournament recall. I think I might have made it up. Maybe I stole it from someone. Can't remember. Anyway, basically, the whole point of retrieval practice is you give students blank pieces of paper and get them to think. So for this particular activity, they get a blank piece of lined paper. This was for a mainstream English class. They had to write down as many quotes, theories, and like key elements from history for each text. If you look closely, you can see the outer row is 8 minutes long. So they have a lot of time to sit there, look up to the right and go, let's actually pull this out of my brain, the kind of knowledge that they have. Importantly, at each round, all of the students keep competing. This is just like to show who's winning sort of thing. And you'll notice that they're in pairs. So for example, if myself and Vivian are competing, I write as much as I can in 8 minutes. Vivian does the same. Then we swap and I tick and cross like, yep, that's right. Yep, that makes sense. Because obviously students have a tendency to just write like, a menu or a shopping list or something and look like they've written a lot. Importantly, you'll note as I'm reading Vivian's answers, I'm getting more answers for the next time I do it and so on and so forth. And then typically in the final round, it's 1 versus 1, so to speak, while the others practice as well. And you get them to do it on the whiteboard, take a picture, and then you've got like, a really detailed list of notes that you can access. You can see their handwriting is pretty much illegible, but they're producing lots of content and actually pulling things out of their brain, which is way more important than trying to, be engaging, at least in my current understanding of teaching and learning. So, and let me check my phone and see if I'm going too fast. Probably, but we'll be right. This ties in well to Zainab's idea. I could talk for probably way too long about these two particular topics. Method of loci or loci. I like saying loci because it sounds cool and magical. Basically, method of loci means method of place, and a mind palace is that, but in your head. So I'll give you some examples. And if you want, I think the QR code takes you to a conversation article about how oral cultures did memorize things a lot better than us. So you can, Aboriginal Australians, First Nations, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders and the way they approach things. So it's that's a bit of where the ancient and modern kind of concepts come in. But the idea is, apparently they're in these shows. I don't really watch TV, but take my word for it. And they're probably pretty old now anyway, and embarrassing. But if you remember Sherlock, he does a bit of like magic hands and then he's walking through a place and there's knowledge and things in there. Right. So this is what I do for my school. This is a map of my school. I give it to the kiddos and I say, okay, we've all just been studying whatever we've been studying, Romeo and Juliet, photosynthesis, I don't know, trigonometry, whatever the heck we've been doing. And I say, your job is to map the knowledge you have in your head onto a physical place, and then we're going to walk it. And so this is some examples, very English-specific examples, of course, but of things that they've done. So if I showed this picture to this particular class, they would straight away think of a quote from Macbeth that we were memorizing for the exam, which was, "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand?" So like the washing, cleaning products, I guess. Also, it shows a little bit how dirty our school is and maybe we need a vacuum. But anyway, Gattaca, already know this one because it's memorable. The quote is, "There's no gene for fate." And there they're playing on the word F8. Sounds like fate, it's kind of like text talk language. And so each one of these things, and even the bad ones like this, where you don't instantly remember the quote, it's important that us as a class are going around taking these pictures, talking about the quotes, and then looking at a PowerPoint like this and kind of making those connections. As we know, everything we know about the brain is like you're thinking webs, connections, connective tissue. The more you get students to actually physically walk, and the more often they access the content, the better. Again, there's no jeans for fate. This is the textiles room where you might see a pair of jeans, yada, yada, yada. Again, I've written an academic paper on this kind of stuff, but these are 7 different strategies you can use for memorizing content that I may or may not go into full detail about as we go, but I'm going to pause and read chat again. Stephanie Bradford said, I used to do that to remember new language words for my Japanese class in high school. Amazing. Yeah. I think too often we do a lot of kind of sitting around in whitewashed classrooms. This is a secondary specific thing, obviously, under the halogen downlights, under the flickering fluorescent globes, and everything we know about memory is that it's kind of like it's place based. So the amount of times where you're walking past something and that triggers a memory because last time you were there, you were reading a book or listening to something or thinking about someone. The last time you had an awkward conversation on the phone, you were in a particular place, etc., etc., etc. And I don't think we leverage that enough in schools. So I'll give you a bit of a flying tour of it. And again, this is overly complicated academic-y stuff. But basically, there's linguistic ways to do it. And I think we do probably too much of that in schools. Like everything's, let's make an acronym again kind of thing. What I'm trying to bring in is mostly spatial, visual, and physical. So if we get time, at the end of the slide, I had basically, I'm teaching my students to be prepared for the exam. And my students would be like, you're teaching us all this stuff about memory and how to do it. Wouldn't it be good if we could bring some of this stuff into the exam? And I'm like, well, guess what? I'm pretty sure you're going to bring your hands to the exam. So we came up with a whole range of complicated Auslan themed finger methods. And my students used to joke that at one point they worked out the student with the, who would be first in the row in their exam, like they had an A last name or whatever. And they were like, okay, if she could just lean back and, make the symbols that we had worked out in class, then everyone would be able to remember the content, yada, 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 which was very funny. But the theory holds. If I can look at my hand and go, okay, when I do that, that reminds me of the concept of clefting and so on and so forth. That's very useful. I know when presenting this previously, I know maths teachers occasionally, I've met some maths teachers who use it, but I think we could probably do a better job. If you're a science teacher, how often do you get students to draw a diagram of a cell? You could probably just as easily do that on their hands, rhizomes, organelles, blah, 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 do those sort of things somehow with their hand or feet or face. I don't know. Just thinking out loud, obviously. The last 2 down the bottom are pretty weird. You could, explain a concept and splash them with water, or explain a concept and leave them out in the cold or something. And in theory, the next time they were cold, they would have that memory trigger. And anyway, that's a bit wee wah. But again, real good books. Liam Kelly's kind of like a famous memory athlete, which is a real thing, apparently. In the sense that she could enter a competition and memorize a deck of cards and pi to 1,000 digits type of thing. And she did, and then she sort of explains her method for that using ancient techniques, Lucases and method of loci and that sort of thing. Real good book. And there's another one called something like Moonwalking with Einstein that takes another approach of just some random journalist who goes to kind of learn to become a memory athlete as well. I think we should be applying some of this stuff to our classes because it's interesting, but because it works most of all, obviously. Yeah. And then there's some research coming out now that's if you could do the same thing with virtual reality, that would be good because it helps students' memory, but that's a bit, that's for a different forum, let's say. These are important things based from the literature that are useful to know. Always, anytime you're doing memorization, students need to make their own because every student's brain is unique. and not in a weird made up way, but like they've watched different TV shows. They're watching thousands of TikToks every day. They're not going to get your Simpsons references or your neighbors references or whatever you're into. They're into different stuff. So they need to make their own neural pathways, which is a fancy way of saying make their own connections with things. Number two is a very complicated one to do in class. But I know medical students have a lot of like acronyms that are like very blue in the sense of like offensive, raunchy, sexy, etc. But the more you can get students' emotions, humor, etc. related, the better they will be able to recall that information. My best mate Michael, who it seems like I've paid to attend and post supportive comments, said, I get my students to draw visuals for themes and key concepts which seem similar. Definitely, yeah. You could get them to do free drawing and those sort of things. I think that was even one of the strategies I skimmed over. Get them to draw a cartoon explaining the concept or those sort of things. And again, often the visceral, lewd elements come in at that point as well because they're drawing cartoons that are a bit sideways often. But number three, most importantly, if I go back, you'll notice I talked about 7 different things. If you ever teach this explicitly to students, there are some kids who, I had students writing songs to help them memorize quotes, again, English specific, mapping particular key passages of books to their favorite song. And for some students, that was like instantaneous. They'd be like, yep, this song, I remember this instantly. And then 90% of the class, the rest of the class would be like, this sucks. I don't know why you're teaching us this. Similarly, your maths and science students might be like acronyms. Yep, I've been using them forever. That's just my thing. That's how I do it. Rote repetition really shouldn't be on the list, but some kids just love it and get the sense of like, I'm really doing some real stuff here. Similarly, narrative, each one of these, like some people really do it better than others and it just connects with them. Memory palace retrieval practice is like, works for everyone because it's just what our brains are built to do. Well, they're not built, you know what I mean. Number 4. Illustrate to students different strategies more or less effective. I just said that, didn't I? Importantly, you should technically revise 1 day later, 1 week later, and 1 month later. And when I talked about the retrieval practice questions, I think the natural way that works, and again, I'm just going to go back so that I can illustrate it, is the more I did this, the more I realized some lessons, like look at this one, I've got 5 questions there. Some lessons, I'm like, I didn't teach much, to be honest. We didn't really cover much. And when that happened, I would just scroll back up and copy an old question from previous week or previous month. And so that's a very natural way of like doing best practice, evidence-informed practice without making it difficult or weird. It was literally like, I don't know what to say. The last lesson we would do, we were just doing a test. I didn't teach them anything. Then that's a really good opportunity for you to just go, that's okay. And then you're introducing concepts that are technically called interleaving or space practice, but that's just a fancy way of saying doing stuff that they've done before. All right. Does anyone want to tell me what techniques have you had success using to recall key information or quotes? I don't know why that says quotes because I'm an English teacher, but I'd be interested to hear if there's any particular techniques or methods that you use that I may not use. They could be very domain specific, depending on teaching area, that sort of thing. But I'd be keen to hear. No pressure if not. As you can tell, I could talk underwater. Just looking at everyone's names for personal interest.
I can see Michael. Looks like he's typing something, so...
Like I said, I've paid Michael in advance. You're not on payroll, unfortunately, but I should have worded you up before. Michael's getting a pay packet at the end.
No, definitely. Oh, there we go. He's got his comment in the chat now.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, Stephanie says chants and songs for lower primary. Beautiful. Well, it technically says primary, but whatever. Just kidding. Just being cheeky. Stephanie says chants and songs for lower primary. Yeah, definitely. A lot of that kind of like Like even just think, we all learnt A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and then it's like, cool, well, you've learnt that one song that we use to remember information, and there are no other songs for information. Thank you, children. Good luck. That's my challenge to you. Think of any other songs other than A, B, C, D, E, F, G that we actually teach with. Maybe Stephanie's got heaps because it's a primary school thing. But, competitions with lolly prizes. Sounds like I would like your class, Reese. Lovely. Students create flashcards with images and dot points. Prizes for best flashcards. Beautiful. Love it. Keywords in a different language. I'm assuming you're a language teacher, Vivian. Otherwise, that's a terrible idea. You're like, here's all the stuff you need to know. And if you want, learn it in a different language. Probably I'm hoping, EAL or language teaching. But yes, definitely. Translanguaging sometimes. That's what I tell my EAL students. All right, keyword games similar to Taboo, songs, writing their own poems, Book It and Bamboozle games. Oh, I don't know Bamboozle. I must be out of the loop. I don't know about anyone else, but I had to limit the amount of Book It because it was like student, some kind of drug. It was like, we're doing Book It today. I'm like, no. And then they'd be crushed. Anyway, I'm looking up Bamboozle. All right, Bamboozle games. Zaheda says, a few years ago, I used to just teach boys, you poor thing, as an acronym for Sokotoa. They remember it as Suck My Toe. There you go. That's a very good illustration of the kind of lewd humor bit really working well. Suck my toe. It's the kind of things you're probably like, yeah, hopefully the principal wasn't walking past, but hey, it really worked to help them remember stuff. Mnemonics, chunking. Oh, Nadia, you got it. You know this better than me. Lucky dips, hands-on activities, Gimp kit. Oh, I feel like that's a STEMmy thing. Anyway, so it's like he's just reading out people's comments at this point. Why did we get this guy? Anyway, Yahoo, beautiful. I was taught it that way too. Oh, jeez. Some weird people out there, I guess, teaching this stuff. All right, Socratic circles. This, again, if you Google my name, there's lots of annoying articles about this. And mostly, unfortunately, I stole it from my wife, who's also a teacher. And it's a typical situation of a man stealing a woman's good ideas. But again, the book on the right, really good. The book on the left, more for you people that end up at a university like me, who just like reading, stuff. But can anyone give me like a Y or an N in the chat to tell me if they've ever heard of this before? Have they ever seen it done? Is it worth me going into detail and getting some head shakes? Yes, of course, me and Michael, we talk all the time, as you can tell. We're just in each other's DMs, etc. All right. Oh, amazing. Interfaith programs, love it. Good job. All right. All right, I'll give you a flying tour because I'm getting 5 yeses out of 54, which tells me at least, doing maths on my feet, 49 people don't know it. Basically, you got 2 concentric circles, meaning one's in, one's out. I'll show you some pictures. These are my kiddos. Girl down the front is student down the front is basically doing, again, these are pictures from my wife's school. She brings in candles and puts the fire on and, stuff like that. Importantly, you notice they've all got the same article. Everyone gets the same article. They annotate it because something about reading, knowing you're going to have to talk about it, is a totally different experience than just being like, hey, read the homework. The student down the front in that picture, because we just had a really nice class that was almost like it was made for this purpose. You can see there's the inner circle and the outer circle. The inner circle is having a discussion. Doing maths on my feet. 49 people don't know it. Basically, you got 2 concentric circles, meaning one's in, one's out. I'll show you some pictures. These are my kiddos. Girl down the front is student down the front is basically doing, again, these are pictures from my wife's school. She brings in candles and puts the fire on and, stuff like that. Importantly, you notice they've all got the same article. Everyone gets the same article. They annotate it because something about reading, knowing you're going to have to talk about it, is a totally different experience than just being like, hey, read the homework. The student down the front in that picture, because we just had a really nice class that was almost like it was made for this purpose. You can see there's the inner circle and the outer circle. The inner circle is having a discussion. Outer circle is taking notes on the discussion within, both in terms of how well or what type of discussion they did, as well as just taking notes on things that they learnt from students. And then you get, as a teacher, you can imagine the kids all run out after the bell goes type of deal. And you can look at something like this and go, all right, I'll probably need to talk to Ben a bit and see, what we can do to, we'll have to shut the door on me. So, I hope you're enjoying it, because she is not. Yes, this gives you a bit of a sense of like, okay, who's talking, who's not talking, how's that going, those kind of things. Again, poor old Jasmine didn't say boo, but and again, important feedback for you as a teacher and for them. Take notes on what they said. I don't know why that looks so much like that, but she was getting into it, I guess. And now I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, because I moved your faces down a little bit, and then now they're gone. And so I want to see them again. I dragged it off the screen and then it's gone. It's totally gone. All right. If you're laughing, good for you. I can't see you anymore, unfortunately. Again, note taking. And again, probably primary school, you would focus more on the discussion element. As a secondary school teacher, it's something I'm sort of teaching explicitly, but that's not the primary focus, especially because most of this was VCE stuff. So, I'm mostly worried about the kids learning the stuff. But, we did do a lot of explicit teaching of like, here's how to actually have a discussion, especially in modern times. Your students will do the kind of like, oh, we're having a debate. And it's like, no, a debate and a discussion are very different. And as Stephanie said, it's, she has used it in interfaith programs. That's probably a really good example of where you want people doing good discussing and not just having a debate, proving who's right, who's wrong, those sort of things. So, I agree with you, but, or I agree with you because, or just playing devil's advocate, having young people have those kind of phrases in their mouths is good, but that's probably self-explanatory. You do a bit of norming, so you set up how best to approach it, those kind of things. This is my wife's innovation. As I said, most of this is stolen from her, but the outer circle are like quite literally providing detailed feedback to their peers. How did you do? How did the group go? And then at the end, usually we do it for like 10 minutes, 10-minute blocks. And at the end of each session, they give feedback to one another. And depending on their level of maturity, that can be either very funny or very awkward. But, even that's part of the skill that you're teaching them, that you don't just be like, that kid didn't say anything. But they do it more gently. Some didn't, or participate as effectively as others, or something. And because again, the academic lens I keep slipping in and out of, different Indigenous groups have very similar methodologies that you can explore. In Canada, it's called a circle talk. Restorative justice circles is very much a similar approach. So it might be good for those kind of things as well. If you're dealing with behavioral things, you could also do it in a similar way. In Australia, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people might call it a yarning circle, probably more the Aboriginal than the Torres Strait Islanders, but it's just a common sort of ancient principle. Anyone want to help me in the chat? I'm going to stop sharing. What protocols have worked for you? When you get kids to talk, how do you do it? Does it work well? How do you go about it? I would love to know more. But no pressure. Also, Robert, howdy, I can see you. Exciting. Jennifer, how are we doing? New faces. Sorry, ignore me. I'm going back to screen sharing, if I can work it out. But everyone's faces keep disappearing. It is so sad. Oh, well. All right, chat says, depends on the class size for me. Definitely. Yep, the Socratic circle approach is very much about that, like divide and conquer almost. If you've ever tried to do a whole class debate, then you know what hell is like. Maybe that's a too specific, reference, but you know what chaos looks like. All right, Nadia says, I still remember the mnemonic my biology teacher gave us to remember the order of classification of living things. But what is it? Think, pair, share. Love it. Beautiful. All right, well, I've got 5 minutes left from my memory. So I'm just going to pick a couple of random things. Jennifer says, I try and create a learning space where kids feel comfortable to share their thoughts. I have given students the opportunity to be a 3-minute teacher and keep the concept in that time. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I haven't done much with peer teaching, but I think I probably should. Kids feel comfortable to share their thoughts. That's definitely the groundwork. That's the hard part. We're not going to go over this too much. I'm actually going to fast forward a lot, so bear with me. But this is all about flipped learning, which is sort of a little bit, pardon me, a little bit outdated of a concept. But this was my thing for many years, and then lockdown happened, at least for us Victorians, and it was like, hey, I was born for this. I was, all that sort of thing. Anyway, Petty Carroll orders 5 gin slings, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There you go. Petty Carroll orders 5 gin slings. Why are we teaching that to young people? Because it's memorable and it makes them feel a bit, ooh, interesting. All right, we'll do this for 5 minutes. This is, if I could teach you one thing, not that I'm teaching you, but, if I could talk one thing into your ear holes, it would be these 2 tools. So initially, this was all about we've got students with dyslexia, dyspraxia, those sort of things. I was like, okay, that was part of my job at one point within the school. I was like, all right, we're going to get these 2 technologies. We're going to help these students a lot because you could in the olden days. I don't know, Nadia, you weren't alive in the olden days. Come on, let's be honest. In the olden days, you could. Okay, I'll take your word for it. So I'm going to focus on me and Nadia have also paid actors, obviously, and she is providing the comedic touch to this session. I'm skipping. All right, this is the last thing. I was. No, you're kidding me. All right, last thing, I promise. Clara Read Pro. Again, the focus initially was on helping students who couldn't read good or who couldn't write good. So Clara Read basically reads out anything. If you've ever seen an old PDF where it looks like someone's photocopied it 100 times and stamped their name all over it, Clara Read can still turn that into readable text and play it as an audio recording, basically. A little bit robot-y, of course, but we're kind of, since the robots are more and more taking over our lives, doesn't really matter that much. But I use it to read academic articles. I use it to read overly long, annoying emails. I use it to read the kind of thing where it's like, hey, just that staff meeting that's happening in 2 hours, could you just read these 4 really long stories? As an English teacher, it's a very common thing for students to say, hey, could you just read my novel? I'd be like, some robot will read it to me, sure, at very fast speed, and then I'll give you the sense that I read it very closely and took ages of my life. But it's all about, I'm just losing the source here because there's too many things. This runs way too long. But Clara Read Pro, very useful for that kind of thing. Get a book, read it. Helpful for that kind of stuff. I'm just going to fast forward through my 200 and something slides. Let's see, am I exaggerating? Just going to fast forward through my 124 slides to be very precise and take you to the end so we can wrap this thing up and you can head into your next session. During lockdown, I published an edited book and you can't buy it because it costs more than $200 because it's an academic book. But anyway, there it is. That's my name. Yay. There's some references that no one cares about. There's some books. If you want to take a picture, you can see I put my own one in the middle because I'm a grifter. I'm not really selling anything, as you can tell. I'm just telling you about what I do as a teacher. But that's the end. That's me. I don't go on Twitter anymore because no one does. But, you can look me up on the internet if you want to talk to me more. I know, me and Matt have to line up our coffee date, but apart from that, and I'm going to give everyone an alien emoji because that's the most professional thing to do in this situation. But thanks for coming, people. Hope that was, useful and or just mildly amusing. As Nadia would say, back in the old days, we used to have good presentations, but now we've got this. But anyway, thanks all. Farhat, anything else we have to do? I would send you the slides, but they're too long, so I haven't done that. But
no, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you on behalf of AUF, Sirius College, and Michael for for joining us today. It was great to see your energy at this time of the day. Generally, as teachers, we're sort of all done by this time, but it's great to see that. So it was a very engaging presentation. So thank you for your time. Does anyone have any questions for Stephen before we head off? No? Okay. All good. All right. Thank you, Stephen. There's also a survey at the end of this link, and we'll be joining the session at 3:30. All right. See you, everyone.